There's something different about gas stations at night. You can feel it the second you step behind the counter. The hum of the fluorescent lights feels too loud. The air feels too still. And the steady rhythm of time, the clock on the wall, the beep of the register begins to twist. Out there on the dark highway, the world forgets you exist. But something else remembers. Every person who's worked the night shift will tell you, not all customers are human. Some don't blink, some don't cast shadows, and some don't come for gas at all. They come for you. These aren't campfire tales. They're true accounts, pulled from forgotten police logs, late-night message boards, and first-hand confessions from clerks who made it to morning, barely. Others, no one's heard from them since. So, before we begin, ask yourself, would you dare work the night shift alone? With nothing but flickering lights between you and what's waiting on the other side of the glass. Welcome to Farcical Fears, where true terror lives, just past the open sign. Subscribe now if you're ready to face the stories most people pretend aren't real. And remember, the next time you stop for gas after midnight, keep the engine running. Pump 6 never stops. I started working the night shift at Thompson's Gas and go off Route 17 in early December, just as the bitter wind started cutting through the cracks in the old glass doors. It wasn't the busiest place, which I didn't mind. I took the job mostly for the solitude. I'd just moved into town after a messy breakup, and spending my nights restocking shelves and counting change sounded like the kind of peace I needed. The gas station sat all by itself, surrounded by dead trees and empty road, just the hum of the coolers, the occasional late-night traveler, and my own thoughts to keep me company. For the first week, everything was normal. I'd clock in around 10:45 p.m., get the rundown from Marcy, the evening cashier, and then settle in for a long, quiet shift. I spent most nights watching the old TV behind the counter or reading true crime books that customers left behind. The station had 6 pumps, numbered left to right from the convenience store. Pump 6 was furthest from the building, practically swallowed by shadows once the overhead light burned out, which it always seemed to do. No matter how often it got replaced, it was on my 8th shift that I first noticed something strange about Pump 6. Around 2:12 a.m., the monitor behind the counter beeped. It displayed a transaction request. Someone had activated Pump 6. I looked out the window. No cars, nothing, just empty blacktop and wind stirring a crushed soda cup. I figured maybe the system glitched. I canceled the transaction and went back to wiping down the coffee machine. 2 nights later, it happened again. Same time, 2:12 a.m. Beep, Pump 6 activated. But again, no customer. No headlights. Not even the sound of a car engine. Just the beep, like a bell tolling in an empty church. I started logging it, just in case. December 12th to 2nd, 12 a.m. Pump 6 activated. No vehicle present. Cancelled transaction. December 13th to 2nd, 12 a.m. Pump 6 activated. Same issue. On the 4th night, I was ready for it. I stood by the window, staring directly at Pump 6 as the clock crept toward to 12. When the beep came, I didn't jump this time. Instead, I squinted into the darkness. There was nothing, or no, wait. Just as I leaned closer, I thought I saw the faintest shimmer of movement, like heat waves rising from asphalt, only colder, more fluid. I stepped outside into the biting wind, the cold wrapping around me like claws. The pump screen was lit up, flashing "Please insert card," as though someone had just touched it. But the nozzle was still hanging in place. No vehicle. No footsteps in the frost-covered pavement. I backed away slowly, went inside, and locked the door. That night, I checked the CCTV recordings for the last few nights. The monitor played back its fuzzy black-and-white feed of Pump 6 at 2:12 a.m. The footage skipped for exactly 6 seconds, static, then resumed with no change. No cars pulling in, no one walking up, just the frozen stillness of an empty pump. I rewound again. Same skip, every night. Always at 2:12. By now, I was unsettled enough to bring it up to Marcy. She gave me a weird look and said, "You're not the first one." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Pump 6 has always been weird," she muttered. We had a guy last year quit because of it. Said he saw someone standing out there with no face. She laughed afterward, but it didn't feel like a joke. Few nights later, I decided to record the area myself using my phone. I placed it in the window facing Pump 6 and hit record at 2:10 a.m. I didn't watch it live. I didn't want to psych myself out. I just let it run and checked it after the shift. What I saw chilled me to my core. At exactly 2:12, the video warped, not skipped, but twisted, like the pixels were struggling to form an image. And then, just for a second, there it was, a figure. Standing by Pump 6. It wasn't a person, not really. Tall, thin, with limbs slightly too long, its head tilted toward the station. It didn't move, it didn't approach, it just stood there, watching. Then the screen went black. I played it again, same result. The image was corrupted, but the shape was clear. A silhouette where no one had been standing. I emailed the video to myself, but the file wouldn't send. Corrupted, I tried uploading it to my cloud, same result. It was like the footage refused to leave the building. The next night, I got brave or stupid. I stood by the door, with my phone ready and waited. When the beep sounded, I stepped outside and aimed the camera at Pump 6. The figure was there, not on the screen, not on the feed. Right in front of me. It looked like a man, sort of. Dressed in an old gas station uniform. Name tag faded and unreadable. But the face, or what should have been a face, was just smooth, like melted. Wax, no eyes, no mouth. Just blank flesh, pale as bone under the overhead lamp that flickered above it. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The air around me went dead still. I swear I heard it breathe, even though it had no mouth. Just a soft, wheezing inhale. Then, it turned and walked away. Not toward the road. Not toward a car. It walked behind the pump and vanished. I stumbled back inside, slammed the door shut, and didn't leave the counter for the rest of the shift. That morning, I called the regional manager and told him everything. His response, "Don't worry about Pump 6. It's been decommissioned for years." I paused. "What do you mean? It's still running." "No, we shut it down in 2017. The payment system isn't even connected." I checked the next night. The pump was still there, screen still lighting up, still asking for a card. And at 2:12 a.m., it beeped. I stopped going outside. I didn't even look up when the beep happened, but one night I noticed a smell like burning rubber and rotting meat. It crept into the station slowly, thick and warm, and with it came the sound of footsteps, not from outside, from inside the store. I grabbed the bat we kept under the counter and shouted, "We're closed." No answer, just slow, deliberate steps. Shoes scraping against tile. I rounded the aisle, heart pounding, so loud I thought I might pass out. No one there. But the security monitor flickered, and on screen behind me was Pump 6. And standing beside it was me only. The face wasn't mine. It was smooth. I quit that night, left the keys, and walked out without even clocking out. I don't care about the paycheck. I don't care what they think. I know what I saw. 2 weeks later, I passed by the station with a friend in the passenger seat. It was 2:11 a.m. We were just talking, laughing about nothing. Then the pump lights came on, and my car started slowing down. Even though I hadn't touched the brakes, I turned to my friend to say something, but he was staring straight ahead, mouth open, eyes wide. Pump 6 was lit, waiting, and standing beside it was a figure, one hand raised like it was flagging us down. Same blank face. Same uniform. But this time, it was wearing my name tag. Let's move to our second story. Behind the ice machine there's a gas station in southern Georgia. Off Highway 95, so easy to miss you wouldn't find it unless you were already lost. No lights on the road, no signs. Just a break in the trees, and a faint blue glow from the open 24 hours sign flickering like it's about to give up. I was driving a delivery van when I found it, about 2 years ago. That's when I heard about the disappearances. But that's not how this story starts. It starts with an ice machine, the old kind. Rusting at the hinges, dented on one side, buzzing louder than it should. It sat along the far wall of the building, just beneath the flickering canopy light. Its big metal door, crusted with frost. You had to walk out of view of the front door to get to it. A blind spot, basically. The first time I went around the corner to grab a bag of ice, I noticed how quiet it got. No crickets, no traffic. Just the hum of that machine, like it was breathing. That hum made the hair on my arms stand up. I grabbed the bag, paid, and got out. The second time I stopped there, I went inside to pay before getting the ice. The clerk, an older guy with deep eye bags and a voice like gravel, looked up slowly and asked, "You sure you want ice?" I laughed it off. Hot day. He nodded but didn't smile. "Don't go behind it." I paused, confused. Behind what? He gestured with his chin toward the side of the store. The machine. "Don't go behind it. Just ... grab your bag and keep walking." That time, I noticed the camera on the sidewall had a long crack across the lens, pointed right at the ice machine. Or at least, it used to. I didn't think much of it, until I found out someone had gone missing. A guy named Terrence Miller, trucker, regular route through the area. Last seen on gas station footage walking toward the ice machine, never seen again. His truck sat in the lot for 3 days before someone reported it. No footage of him walking away. No evidence he left, just static after he went around the corner. No one went looking, no one cared, because around there things go missing all the time. After that, I couldn't get it out of my head. What could be behind an ice machine? A person, an animal, a hiding place. I decided I'd find out. I didn't stop during the day, only at night. Always around the same time, between 2 and 3 a.m., when the road was empty and the clerk stopped looking people in the eyes. I asked about the missing guy, but the clerk just shook his head. Said they'd been telling the owner to remove the machine for years. Said it wasn't safe. I laughed. What, like a rat problem? The clerk didn't laugh back. Eventually, I asked directly, "What's behind it?" He didn't answer. So I looked myself. On my 4th stop, I waited until no one else was around, grabbed a drink, went outside, and walked casually to the ice machine. It was humming louder than ever. I placed my bag on top of it, crouched down, and peered behind, just darkness. The machine was bolted to the wall, but there was a gap, a hollow space, between the machine and the building's siding, just big enough for someone to squeeze through. I leaned in closer. Something moved. Not fast, not sudden. Just a slow, steady movement, like someone shifting in their sleep. I jerked back so hard, I hit my head on the metal casing. A low scraping sound followed me as I stumbled away. I told myself it was a raccoon, or maybe wind, but there was no wind that night, and the scraping had sounded ... deliberate. I didn't go back for a week. When I did, I brought a flashlight. It was raining soft at first, but enough to make the parking lot gleam. The clerk gave me a look when I walked in, but said nothing. I nodded, bought a bottle of water I didn't need, and walked outside like I had every other time. I stood beside the ice machine, heart pounding, and switched on the flashlight. I bent down and aimed it behind the machine. Eyes. 2 of them. Wide, yellowish, set far apart, too far. They blinked, slowly, not like a person, like a reptile. The beam flickered, the battery died. I dropped the flashlight and ran. Didn't even get my ice. I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing those eyes every time I closed mine. Not human, not animal. Something else. Curiosity should have ended there, but it didn't. I became obsessed. Started searching forums. Weird places. Niche threads. People had talked about it before. Not many, but enough. Posts from years back describing the thing. Behind the machine. Stories of people who felt watched while filling up their tank. Even one user who claimed they heard whispering in the static on their dashcam audio. The deeper I went, the more I found. But no one knew what it was. No name. No photos. Only one thing in common. It only came out at night. And it never left the space behind the machine. Until last year, a teenager went missing. Her name was Alyssa Rains. She had stopped at the gas station with her boyfriend, left the car to grab ice, and never returned. The police investigated the boyfriend, of course, but he was inside paying when she vanished. Security footage again cut to static, only difference this time. The boyfriend's phone recorded a short audio clip, something he picked up by accident when calling Alyssa right after she disappeared. In the clip, you can hear her footsteps, the crunch of gravel, the buzz of the ice machine, and then something else, a growl, low, deep, wet, and then a scream. Cut off halfway. The boyfriend released it anonymously online. That's how I found it. I played it dozens of times. Whatever made that sound wasn't human. It's not just behind the machine. It lives there. Or worse, it waits. I haven't been back in months. I changed my route, told dispatch I'd rather take the longer drive than stop there again. But 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, no one spoke. Just the hum of a machine, a buzz so loud it vibrated through the speaker, and beneath it, scraping dots slow heavy, then a voice, barely audible, "Come back." I hung up, blocked the number. Told myself it was a prank. But now, I'm hearing the sound in other places. Late at night, in parking lots, outside my apartment window. Like it followed me, like it found a new machine. And last night, I walked past the freezer at my local gas station. It buzzed, hummed, louder than it should. I looked behind it. There was nothing. But when I turned to leave, I noticed something on the floor. A smear, wet leading toward the machine. I'm not going to check again, but I know what's behind there. And it knows me now. Let's move to our third story. Cherry Cola and candle wax. I used to work at a small gas station just outside of Barrow Hill. The kind of place where everything's outdated by at least 2 decades. Yellowed tile floor, coffee that tastes like burnt engine oil, and a single working bathroom with a flickering light and a rust-stained sink. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a paycheck. The manager, Dave, was rarely around. I handled the night shift mostly alone, save for the occasional trucker or a drunk stumbling in from the highway. But one customer kept coming back, and I wished to God I hadn't let him. It started mid-January, just after New Year's. That first night, he walked in around 2:30 a.m. I remember the time because I was halfway through reorganizing the chip rack, trying to fight off the usual 3 a.m. drowsiness. He came in so quietly, I didn't even hear the door chime. Just looked up, and there he was, standing at the back of the store. Already holding a glass bottle of cherry cola. He was, ... Wrong. Not in a grotesque way. In fact, he looked totally normal, at first glance. Gray hoodie, blue jeans, about 40, pale skin, clean-shaven. But he was too still. He didn't blink. He didn't shift his weight. He just stood there, holding the bottle, like he'd been standing for hours. When he approached the counter, I noticed something in his other hand, a little red pouch. I figured it was his wallet. But instead of reaching inside it, he poured something from it, a single round, melted lump of wax, like the stub of a candle that had burned down to nothing. He placed it on the counter without a word. I blinked. Sir, that's not currency." He tilted his head, slowly, then slid the cherry cola forward. "I'm sorry, man, I can't take this," I said, laughing nervously. "You got any cash or a card?" He didn't speak. He just turned around, walked out, and left the wax on the counter. It was still warm. I tossed it in the trash and figured he was just some local eccentric. I'd seen plenty working nights. Folks who talked to themselves or paid with Canadian coins, but the next night he came back. Same time, same cherry cola, same wax stubbed again. He placed it down and said nothing. This time I didn't argue. I just watched him. He stared at me for exactly 5 seconds. I counted, then turned and left. It became a pattern, every night. 2:30 a.m., cherry cola, candle wax, always the same, always silent. After a week, I stopped trying to throw the wax away. I started lining them up behind the counter like trophies. Then one night, he didn't come in. I waited, stared at the door. Nothing. No chime. No pale figure. Nothing but the hum of the fridges and the buzz of the overhead light. I won't lie, I was relieved. Until I got home the next morning and smelled something sweet. Wax, cherry, smoke. There was a single stub of melted red wax on my doorstep. I didn't tell anyone. I swept it up, tossed it out, and told myself it was coincidence. But I started noticing things. Burnt edges on my pillow. Wax residue on my nightstand. That cherry smell clinging to my clothes, even after washing them. He came back 2 nights later. But he wasn't alone. He stood in the aisle, cherry cola in hand, staring forward like usual. But when I looked past him, I saw shadows, not people. Just shapes, vague and flickering, like they were part of some projection, moving when they shouldn't. He placed the wax stub on the counter. This one was black. I didn't say a word, neither did he. He left. The next morning, I found a message written in melted wax on my car windshield. "You took it." I called my manager. "Took what?" he asked. I told him everything, the customer, the wax, the repetition. He went quiet, then said, "That sounds like him." "Like who?" "Marcus Grange. Used to work here. Before me. Before you. Back in the 80s. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. According to Dave, Marcus was a night clerk like me. He was obsessed with some weird candle cult, said he could preserve moments in wax. He went missing in 1987, after police found dozens of burned-down candles and cherry soda bottles in his house. The thing is, no one ever found a body. Just a melted mass of wax, in the shape of a man in the basement. And a single bottle of unopened cherry cola, placed perfectly in the center of the room. I didn't believe him. Not really. But then the deaths started. The first was just a customer. A guy who'd come in a few times, real polite, always bought scratch tickets. I found out he died in a house fire 2 days after I saw him. The fire started in his bedroom. Investigators said it looked like the blaze had begun from a single candle left unattended. The second was a local girl. Teenager. She'd come in for gum. Didn't even speak to me. Found burned to death in her car the next morning. Again, the fire started in the passenger seat. Wax residue found in the center console by the time the third body dropped. An old lady who came in for cat food and wound up cooking alive in her bathtub. I knew it was connected. I lined up the wax stubs. 9 in total, and when I looked at each one, I remembered a face, a customer. Someone who had come through just before that wax appeared. He was marking them, tagging them with wax, like cursed objects, and they all died by fire. I panicked. I tried burning the wax, burying it, flushing it. Nothing worked. Every time I got rid of it, the next morning, it would be back. Cleaned, lined up neatly on the counter. Then, one night, he didn't come in at 2:30. He came in at 1:17. I was in the bathroom. The store was empty when I came out, but the door chime had gone off, and there on the counter was a new wax stub, larger than usual. Blood-red dot next to it, a bottle of cherry cola. Opened and a photo of me, sleeping in my bed. I don't know how he got it. I don't know how he found me. But that night, I didn't go home. I sat in the gas station until morning, then drove 2 towns over and checked into a motel. Slept with the lights on. When I returned the next day to quit, Dave stopped me. "Don't," he said. "If you leave the station, he follows you." I told him I didn't care. I wasn't dying in a blaze over a damn bottle of soda. "You've already taken the trade," he said. "What trade?" "The first wax you kept. That was the deal. 1 stub for 1 soul. It binds you." I walked out anyway. That was 6 months ago. I've moved 3 times. But every few nights, the cherry scent comes back. I find wax in odd places, on my light switches, doorknobs, the edge of my steering wheel. 2 weeks ago, my neighbor's house caught fire. She died in her sleep. Last night, I found a bottle of cherry cola in my fridge. I didn't buy it, and beside it, on the shelf, a brand new wax stub. Still warm. I didn't touch it, but I know that's not enough. The trade was made, and it's only a matter of time before he comes to collect. Let's move to our forest story. The Midnight Whisperer, before I took the night shift at Ridgeway 12 gas station. I was just another college kid drowning in student loans, desperate for a job that could pay the bills without completely wrecking my schedule. The gas station was out in the middle of nowhere, a forgotten stretch along Highway 17 that most people only knew because they had to stop there. I figured the nights would be slow, with just a handful of customers and lots of time to study or listen to music behind the counter. But I was dead wrong. The first week was uneventful. I learned the routine, figured out how to kill time, and nodded to the few truckers who came through. The place was small, old-fashioned, with flickering neon signs and the faint smell of stale coffee lingering in the air. I liked the solitude at first. It made me feel like I was in my own little world, far from the chaos of college life. Then the strange things started. At first it was subtle noises I told myself were just my imagination. The faint static on the radio when it wasn't even turned on. The lights flickering, even though the wiring was supposedly fixed recently. But mostly, it was the feeling. The sense that I wasn't alone. That something was watching me from the shadows just beyond the fluorescent glow. One particular night, maybe my third week, I was behind the counter restocking snacks. The clock read 12:07 a.m. when I heard it, a soft whisper. So faint it was almost swallowed by the hum of the refrigerators. It sounded like a breath, a sigh, a voice barely there. Help, ... It said. I froze. The store was empty, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. I scanned every corner with wide eyes, but no one was there. The entrance door was locked. The windows showed nothing but the blackness of the night. I convinced myself it was exhaustion, or maybe the wind outside carrying strange sounds. I told my roommate about it the next day, half laughing. He said I was probably just stressed, but I wasn't so sure. The whispers didn't stop. They grew more frequent, more urgent. Over the next few nights, I could make out more words. Come. Alone. ... Follow. ... They were never loud enough to be clear, always just on the edge of hearing, but unmistakably there. I started writing them down. Each night after the whispers, I scribbled the phrases on scraps of paper and stuck them behind the counter. But by morning, those papers were always blank, like the words had been erased. One night, the whispers led me all the way to the back storage room. The air grew colder as I approached. When I pushed open the door, I felt a sudden weight drop in my stomach. The room was pitch black, but not just dark. It was an absence of light itself, as if swallowing everything. From the darkness came a voice, soft, desperate, almost pleading, "Help me." I stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind me with a sickening bang. The whispering filled the room, circling me like vultures. I fumbled for my phone to use as a light, but the screen stayed black, dead as if drained of power. The whispers grew louder, forming words I couldn't understand. Filled with sorrow and rage, for what felt like hours, I wandered blindly in that blackness, heart hammering, breath shallow. I stumbled over crates, walls, and cold metal pipes, but there was no escape. The voice was both everywhere and nowhere, guiding me deeper into the abyss. Then, just as suddenly as it had shut, the door opened. I stumbled out, trembling, sweat cold on my skin. Standing in the shadows beyond the door was a man, tall, thin, with a coat that swallowed him in darkness. His eyes shone bright, unnervingly calm, but full of knowing. "You have seen the Midnight Whisperer," he said, voice low and urgent. "Now it knows you." Before I could ask who he was or what he meant, he vanished like a wisp of smoke into the night. I never saw him again after that night. The whispers followed me everywhere in my dreams, in the silence between conversations, in the static of my radio at home. They were a constant reminder that something had crossed into my world. Sleep became a fragile thing. I dreaded closing my eyes, afraid I'd hear that voice again, calling me back to the darkness. I tried to talk to the other clerks, but no one would admit to hearing anything. Some laughed it off as night shift paranoia. Others said Ridgeway 12 had a bad reputation for ghost stories. But no one talked about the Midnight Whisperer. I did some digging on my own. I found old articles from decades ago, about a gas station clerk who vanished without a trace from Ridgeway 12. The police searched for weeks, found nothing. Witnesses reported hearing whispers late at night, but no one was brave enough to investigate. The stories said the whisperer was a spirit trapped between worlds, a lost soul, desperate to be freed, but also dangerous. Anyone who hears its voice risks being pulled into the same darkness. I wanted to believe it was all nonsense, that I was just tired and imagining things. But then, on a night like any other, the gas station phone rang. No one was supposed to be calling after midnight, and I hadn't given my number to anyone. I answered. Nothing, just silence. Then a whisper, so faint I barely caught it. Come back, ... Alone, ... I hung up and looked around. The store was empty, except for me. The lights flickered. I knew the whisperer was calling. I wanted to leave, run far away, but I didn't. I turned off the lights and stepped outside. Into the cold night, the wind had died. The only sound was my footsteps on the cracked pavement. Then I heard it again, the whisper, just behind me, double quotes, come, ... alone, ... I kept walking, deeper into the night, toward the place where no light reaches and no soul returns. Let's move to our Five Saints story. The echoes of Pump 3. I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. All my life, I had been a skeptic, brushing off tales of hauntings as folklore, superstition, or people's tired imaginations running wild. That was before I took the graveyard shift at the Maplewood gas station, and everything I thought I knew was turned upside down. Maplewood was an old station perched on the outskirts of a small town, far enough from the city lights to feel swallowed by darkness at night. The station was a relic from a different time. It's paint-chipped and faded, its pumps rusty and worn, and the flickering neon sign above the entrance sputtering like a dying firefly. It was a place people stopped out of necessity, not choice. The locals avoided Pump 3. It was always out of order, covered in rust, and dimly lit by a weak overhead bulb that buzzed and flickered as if struggling to survive. Whispers surrounded that pump, rumors that it was haunted by a restless spirit. I scoffed at the idea. Ghosts, Pump 3. Ridiculous. Yet, the uneasy feeling I felt every time I passed by it made me think twice. My first few nights were quiet enough, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the occasional rumble of cars passing on the highway, and the dull beep of the register as customers paid for coffee or gas. But as the clock approached midnight, a subtle shift would take hold in the air. The store felt colder, heavier, as though the darkness outside pressed against the thin glass windows. Then came the whispers. At first, they were almost imperceptible, soft voices barely carried on the chilly breeze. Just beyond the edges of hearing, I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Desperate, sorrowful, calling out for something or someone. One night, standing behind the counter, I heard it clearly, a faint, breathy whisper calling my name. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck rising, and scanned the empty store. No customers, no cars, just the cold silence and that haunting voice. From that night on, the whispers grew louder and more frequent. They seemed to come from outside, near Pump 3. I tried to ignore them, told myself I was just tired or imagining things, but sometimes, the radio in the back room would flicker to life, static crackling, and through it, I heard distant sobbing and cries. I watched the security cameras obsessively. One night, my breath caught in my throat when I saw her figure standing motionless beside Pump 3, her white dress fluttering in a wind I couldn't feel. She stood there for hours, silent and still. When I stepped outside, she was gone. The parking lot was empty, save for the flickering light of Pump 3. I spoke to the locals, hoping to find answers. They told me about Emily, a young woman who had died in a terrible accident near that pump decades ago. On a stormy night, she had tried to flag down help, stepping onto the slick pavement, only to be struck by a car. Her body was never found, and since then, her restless spirit was said to haunt the gas station, trapped between worlds, longing for peace. The more I learned, the more the atmosphere at Maplewood changed. The air grew thick and cold near Pump 3. Shadows shifted where they shouldn't. I started leaving small offerings, a bouquet of wilted wildflowers, a lit candle, a handwritten note, begging for forgiveness and rest. The whispers softened, transforming into faint pleas. One night, I heard her voice, fragile, barely audible, "Help me." But the station fought back. The flickering lights plunged me into darkness. The floorboards creaked under invisible footsteps. I felt icy fingers trace my skin, though no one was there. Every night became a struggle to hold on to sanity. One evening, while cleaning near Pump 3, I felt the unmistakable brush of a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing, but the temperature plunged. The anguished whispers erupted into a scream that ripped through the night. The pump's light died, and the ground trembled beneath me. I fled inside, heart racing, only to find a man waiting, one I'd seen lurking on the outskirts before. His eyes were wild, haunted by fear. He told me Emily had marked me, that the station wouldn't let me go until I helped her find peace. Days blurred into restless nights filled with cold shadows and haunting whispers. I tried everything: prayers, talking to the silence, leaving gifts. Slowly, her voice grew clearer, a fragile cry for release, yet the mystery of her past remained locked away. One dawn, I found a rusted locket buried beneath the gravel near Pump 3. Inside was a faded photo of Emily Young, vibrant, full of life. On the back, an inscription, "For my love, forever." That night, the station seemed to weep with sorrow. The air grew heavy, shadows lengthened, and the earth beneath me shook. The figure appeared not just a ghost, but a memory of heartbreak and pain. Emily's spirit reached out, desperate to be freed from a tragic past tied to love, loss, and injustice. I realized helping her meant uncovering what kept her bound, secrets buried in the soil and shadow of Maplewood. But the station refused to let her go, and neither did the darkness. Now, whenever the wind whispers through Maplewood, I hear her call, an echo of sorrow, longing, and hope. Some echoes never fade. They linger, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. Let's move to our sixth story. Don't open the blue door. They told me not to open the blue door. Said it was an old maintenance closet. Said it didn't open anymore, anyway. But they said it in that way people say things they don't really believe. A too casual shrug. That quick change of subject. I'd just started the night shift at the last stop, Gas and Deli, a cracked out, dying little place somewhere off Route 13 in rural Pennsylvania. Not even a real town nearby. Just fields, trees, silent sand, that damn blue door at the back of the store. I saw it the first night. It's at the far end of the employee hallway, past the freezer and the mop sink, where the light bulb always flickers. It was shut tight, heavy-looking, scratched up like a dog had clawed at it once, or maybe something bigger. A faded sign hung crookedly on it, "Authorized personnel only." And underneath that, written in permanent marker, nearly rubbed off, "Do not open." "No matter what, of course?" I asked. "Yeah, just storage," said Stan, the shift manager. "Old equipment, junk. No key anyway. Don't worry about it." Then he turned and walked off fast, like I'd asked something wrong. Second night, I was on my own. Midnight to 8 a.m. Dead hours usually. Nothing but truckers grabbing coffee and the occasional tweaker trying to trade scrap metal for a bottle of Pepsi. I stocked shelves, cleaned up puke in the bathroom, counted expired hot dogs on the roller grill. But every time I passed that hallway, I swore the door looked ... different. Like it had shifted, just a little. One hinge a bit looser. A longer scratch in the paint. On my third pass, I noticed the knob. Brass, worn down to a dull silver. And I swear to God it was warm. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Night 3, things got weird. It started around 3:33 a.m. I know the time because the wall clock froze. The hands just stopped. No ticking. My watch was still moving, but the store's clock dead. That's when I heard it. A knock, not on the front door. Not from outside. From the back. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I froze. It was coming from the blue door. I walked back there slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The store was quiet, but a kind of quiet that wasn't natural, like the silence you get before a tornado hits. The hum of the coolers had stopped. Even the buzzing from the flickering light was gone. Another knock, this time, softer, almost polite. I pressed my ear to the blue door, and something whispered back. It was too faint to make out words, like wind through dry leaves, but it wasn't wind, it had intent, like it was waiting. I backed away. Didn't sleep that day. Came back the next night, with a crowbar in my trunk. Stan wasn't there anymore. They said he quit without notice. Didn't even collect his last paycheck. I asked the day manager about the door. She laughed. Said, "Oh, you mean the devil's closet?" She thought it was a joke. I didn't. Night 4, the door was open an inch. Just an inch. But it wasn't. Like that when I started shift. I checked that hallway first thing now. Every time. I know it was shut. There was no light coming from inside. Just blackness. The kind of black you don't find in nature. A wrong black. I should have quit. I should have turned and walked out. Left the keys and never looked back. But I didn't. I pushed it open, not all the way. Just enough to peek in. And I saw something. A room, maybe. No, more like a space. Too big to be a closet. It went on forever. No walls. Just endless floor. White tile. Just like the stores. And in the distance, a flickering light. And shapes moving too far to see clearly. But they were coming closer. I slammed the door and shoved a shelving unit in front of it. The whispers came louder that night. I called the regional manager. Told her the store was unsafe. Told her about the door. She sighed and said, "You saw it, didn't you?" Just like that. No shock, no denial. "They all do," she said. "But they never listen." That's when the phone went dead. No dial. Tone. No signal. Just a long, low, static hum. The whispers didn't stop. They followed me around the store. Through the vents. From the cooler. Even from the coffee pot. Always just barely audible. But always there. By the 5th night, I was locking myself in the front office. I brought a crucifix, a flask, a hammer. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the power went out. Emergency lights kicked on, but dim red. Enough to see by, not enough to feel safe. I heard something dragging across the tile. Heavy, slow. Coming closer, I made the mistake of looking at the security cameras. The blue door was open, wide open, and something was stepping out. It wasn't a person. It looked like absence, like a man-shaped void. No face, just blackness. But not just black, it sucked in the light around it. Like it was made of shadows, stacked on top of shadows. And wherever it walked, the tile underneath cracked. I turned off the monitor. I hid under the desk. I don't remember falling asleep. But I woke up at 6:47 a.m., sunlight creeping in, and the overheads buzzing back to life. The door was shut, but now there were footprints. Black, wet, like oil. Leading from the blue door to the register. And then stopping, like whatever came out had vanished or was still there watching. I called off that night. Told them I had the flu. They didn't believe me, but they didn't argue either. I went to a church. Talked to a priest. He said gas stations were thin places, liminal, transitional, all-night places, invite all-night things, he told me. Things that don't like being ignored. He blessed a bottle of holy water for me. I came back for my final shift. Brought a flashlight, 3 crucifixes, salt, and a mirror. I barricaded the hallway, didn't even go near it. At 3:33 a.m., the power went out again. But this time, I didn't hide. I stood behind the counter and waited. The dragging returned. Slower now, like it knew I was there. It didn't try to be quiet. It wanted me to hear it. The mirror fogged up, even though the room was cold. I heard whispering through the speakers, even though the radio was off. The door creaked. I didn't look. I held the holy water and whispered every prayer I could remember. Then silence. No dragging, no whispering, just quiet. I opened my eyes. It was morning. The lights were on. The door was gone. Not shut. Not locked. Gone. A blank wall, where it used to be. I quit that day. Never went back. But sometimes, When I drive by the old place, shuttered now, windows boarded up, I swear I hear knocking. 3. Slow taps. And something whispering from just behind the glass, asking to be let in. The freezer door never shuts. It started when Martin took over the night shift at a small, independently owned gas station off the I-70 in Kansas. The place wasn't much to fuel pumps, a dusty little Martin sighed, and a rickety sign that flickered more than it shone. It had always been a stopover for truckers and late-night travelers. But as years passed and new highways rerouted the traffic, the station became quieter. Martin had been out of work for months and didn't ask questions when offered the job. All he had to do was man the register, restock the shelves, and keep the place clean from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It sounded simple enough, but on his very first shift, something small and strange happened that he couldn't quite forget. The walk-in freezer door refused to stay shut. He'd push it closed. It would click into place. 5 minutes later, it would swing open again. No gust of air. No faulty latch. No obvious cause. Just open. Martin figured it was something mechanical and wrote a note for the day manager to look into it. But the following night, it was still acting up. This time, he wedged a milk crate against it and even looped a bungee cord around the handle. Still, hours later, it stood wide open, the air around it chilled and wrong. It wasn't just the door. That second night, Martin noticed that the power flickered every time he stood too close to the freezer. The lights dimmed, then returned to normal. When he walked away, everything was fine. On his third night, he swore he heard whispering coming from inside, but the second he opened the freezer to check, the sound stopped and nothing was there but cold shelves and neatly stacked frozen burritos. By the end of his first week, Martin stopped trying to reason with it. The freezer had a mind of its own. He kept the milk in a cooler near the counter and warned the occasional customer not to go near it. Most laughed it off. Some did in single quotes. Then came the night when Martin arrived for work and found a handprint on the inside of the freezer door. It was small, like a child's, and smeared with something reddish-brown that wasn't quite blood and wasn't quite rust. Martin hesitated, staring at it for a long time. He wiped it clean and went about his night. But the hairs on his arms didn't lay flat for hours. He told the owner, an older woman named Linda, about the freezer's strange behavior. She sighed heavily and said, "You can quit if you want, but I won't pay you for notice. That freezer's been like that since I bought the place in '92. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone." He tried, but something about it demanded attention. It began to escalate. On his 10th night, the freezer door didn't just open, it slammed. Hard. So hard, it knocked a display of chips off a shelf. Martin rushed to the back, heart hammering, and found the door hanging wide open. Frost curled out along the floor like fog. And that whispering, it was back. Closer now, louder. Almost words. He bought a motion detector the next day and set it up pointing at the freezer. Around 2:13 a.m., it went off. He ran to check the feed. The footage showed the freezer door opening by itself. Then, nothing. No figure, no wind, no hand. Just a door swinging open like it had been waiting for someone to notice. He didn't know what to make of it. Then the dreams began. Every night after work, he'd come home, shower, eat a microwave meal, and fall into bed, exhausted. And every night, he'd dream of standing inside the freezer. But it wasn't the same. Freezer, it was darker, endless, no shelves. Just frozen air stretching for miles. Sometimes, in the distance, he could make out a figure, small, childlike, pale, always facing the wall. Sometimes, it turned around. Martin stopped sleeping. He stopped eating much. He tried to quit, but Linda reminded him of his contract. "You signed up for a month," she said, her tone sharper than before. "We both agreed. If you walk early, you don't get paid. That's how we keep people from ghosting mid-shift." Desperate, Martin agreed to finish the month, but he began carrying a crucifix, a lighter, and a crowbar. He refused to let the freezer beat him, but each night it became worse. The power flickered constantly now. The whispers had evolved into moaning. Sometimes, when he passed the aisles, The lights flicked off behind him and came back on ahead like something was pacing him. One night, while restocking shelves, he heard the familiar clang of the freezer door. Only this time, when he turned, it didn't open. It was already open. What clanged was something else, something metal, like a latch. When he walked closer, the chill hit him like a wall. But he wasn't prepared for what he saw. A figure stood inside the freezer. Pale, soaked, eyes wide open, and cloudy, a girl, no older than 10, wearing a tattered blue coat. Her lips were dark purple. Her arms were outstretched, as if she were waiting for someone to hug her. Martin dropped the box he was holding. It scattered canned goods across the floor, but he didn't move. He couldn't. She opened her mouth and whispered, "Close the door." He ran. He ran into the back office, slammed the door, and didn't come out until sunrise. When he emerged, the freezer door was shut. Perfectly, silently. Martin went home, fell into bed, and slept harder than he had in weeks. When he awoke, there was a voicemail from Linda. "You did good," she said flatly. She doesn't usually talk. Don't be afraid. That freezers were like a room. Sometimes, the lost end up there. You just have to listen. She was waiting. For you. He played that message 3 times. He didn't go in to work that night, or the night after. He packed up and drove to his brother's place in Denver. 2 days later, Linda left another message. You shouldn't have left her alone. That night, the dreams returned. Except now, the little girl wasn't in the distance. She was at the edge of the freezer, whispering his name. The dream ended. When she placed her hand on his chest, Martin woke up with frostbite on his left shoulder. Doctors said it wasn't possible. But the ER photo showed skin damage consistent with prolonged exposure to freezing temperatures. They accused him of faking it for drugs. He didn't argue. He checked himself into a hotel and burned the clothes he had worn the night before. 2 nights later, he got a call from a new number. It was a young man, sounded shaken. "You're Martin, right? You used to work at the station off I-70. Man, I took the night shift. You ever see anything weird with the freezer?" Martin's blood turned to ice. The man continued, "I keep hearing voices, and last night, it opened on its own. There was this smell, like old water, and mold." Martin hung up. He packed what little he had and drove further west. He hasn't stopped driving since, but the freezer door, it never shuts, and sometimes, on the darkest highways, in the glow of gas station lights, he passes without stopping. Martin swears he can see a little girl in a blue coat, standing just inside the glass. Let's move to our 8th story. The Red Dot. It was my 2nd week working the night shift at the Black Hollow Gas and Go, the only station open after midnight for 20 miles in either direction. Located just off a lonely, winding stretch of rural highway, it wasn't much more than a crumbling parking lot. 3 dusty pumps, and a flickering canopy light that never stopped buzzing. The store inside reeked of burnt coffee and stale jerky, the kind of place that could go a week without a customer and nobody would notice. Perfect for a college dropout like me, who just needed a paycheck without questions. I'd been warned by the day manager, Carl, to never stay past 6 a.m. Apparently the store's security system was on some kind of weird schedule with a private contractor, and if I lingered too long, the alarm would reset and lock down the building. It sounded like nonsense, but I didn't argue. I just clocked in, stared at the dusty shelves, and waited for time to crawl by. Then came the Red Dot. It showed up around 2:17 a.m. on a Thursday. I was half asleep behind the counter, head bobbing, when a faint beep came from the monitor next to the register the security feed. Normally, the cameras were silent unless someone triggered motion outside. But now, in the corner of the screen, I saw it. A glowing red dot. Not a light from the camera, not part of the software interface, an actual red dot. Like a laser pointer, slowly moving along the far wall near the backroom freezer. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. The dot lingered, then it vanished. We didn't sell laser pointers. No kids ever came by at night. No cars had pulled into the lot. I even stepped outside with a flashlight and did a slow sweep. Nothing, just wind, crickets, and that oppressive silence you only get in the dead of night. But that dot kept coming back. The next night, again at 2:17 a.m. sharp, the dot reappeared, this time on the floor near the mop bucket in the janitor's closet. I only noticed because the closet door creaked open by itself. The light was moving, scanning like someone was painting the inside of the closet from outside the building. I checked the back windows, all shut. I killed the inside lights, hoping to catch someone out in the lot, but there wasn't a soul around. That damn red dot kept sliding from wall to ceiling like it had a mind of its own. Then it vanished again. That week, every night like clockwork, the dot returned, always at the same time, always in a different place, always alone. Then it started showing up in the bathrooms. I refused to go into the women's restroom alone that Friday. The security feed showed the red dot hovering above one of the mirrors, just floating there like an insect caught mid-air. I went to open the door with my master key, but it wouldn't budge. Not stuck locked from the inside. I knocked. Silence. Suddenly, the sink faucet turned on. I watched the pressure on the feed as water gushed from the tap. The camera's grainy night vision blurred everything, but for a few seconds, I swore I saw a figure, just a silhouette, standing directly under the red dot, hands gripping the edge of the sink, motionless. Then the light flickered, the feed cut out, and when it came back, the door was wide open. The room was empty, dry, spotless. I started recording the feeds on my phone by the following week. The red dot had spread. One camera would show it hovering in the air. Another would pick it up across the room. No way anyone could move that fast. It started appearing on objects, a shelf of candy, the back of my chair, even my shoulder once. I only saw it after watching the replay in slow motion. But I swear to you something was standing behind me. Something tall, not human-shaped. I told Carl about it, expecting him to laugh it off. But when I mentioned the red dot, he went pale. He didn't laugh. He didn't even respond. He just looked out the window, lips pressed tight, and muttered something like, "It's starting again." "What's starting?" I asked. He didn't answer. Just walked back to his car, and never returned my calls after that. I looked into the station's history. Turns out, 2 years ago, there was another night. Clerk Riley disappeared mid-shift. Security footage was blank. No signs of forced entry. The only odd detail mentioned in the report was that the last frame of the final tape showed a single red dot hovering above the freezer door. They never found Riley. The next night, the dot moved differently. It wasn't random anymore. It moved with intent. At 2:17, I watched on the screen as the dot hovered over the coffee machine. The moment I looked away from the screen, the machine turned on by itself, gurgling, hissing, spitting hot coffee all over the counter like it was alive. I rushed over to unplug it, burning my hand in the process, only to find that it wasn't even plugged in. I had to leave. I packed my bag, took my phone, and rushed to the back door. But it wouldn't open, neither would the front. The red dot was now on every screen, every camera, circling me, blinking slowly. I screamed into the empty store. Then the lights shut off, pitch black, no sound, but my own breathing. Then the beeping started. 1 beep, then 2, then 3. It was coming from the ceiling speakers. 4, 5, 6, 7 dot, at 17, beeps. The dot appeared on the floor in front of me, and from it, the shape began to rise. Not from the floor but from the light itself, as if it was a doorway. A figure, gaunt, head tilted, long limbs, twitching. No eyes, just black pits, and a jaw that unhinged like a snake. It didn't speak, but I heard it. It said my name, in my head, over and over. Then it vanished. I woke up in the parking lot at dawn. My net was gone. My phone was gone. My bag was melted, literally melted, like it had been set on fire. The store closed, lights off. No sign I'd ever been inside. I reported it to the sheriff. He said the Black Hollow Gas and Go had been condemned 2 years ago, Riley's disappearance. He said it never reopened, but I remember working there. I have the burn on my hand. I have recordings of the red dot on an old flash drive. I even found a single still frame from the night of me, standing behind the counter, a red dot right on my forehead. The timestamp says 2:17 a.m. every night since then, at exactly 2:17. My apartment lights flicker, and sometimes, I see the dot again. It's getting closer, and I don't think it's done with me. Let's move to our 9th story. The man behind Pump 3. When I first took the graveyard shift at the 24-hour Ridgetop fuel station, I was told 2 things. First, never turn off the exterior floodlights, no matter what. Second, if anyone ever shows up at Pump 3 and doesn't come inside to pay, don't go outside to ask, just let them leave. At the time, I figured it was just local superstition, the kind of urban legend small towns cling to like a badge of honor. Every place has its ghost stories. It's don't go into the woods after dark nonsense. I wasn't from Ridgetop. I'd moved in a few weeks earlier, looking to get away from a life that wasn't working. This quiet little mountain town with 1 gas station, 2 diners, and a post office seemed like the perfect escape. The night job was boring, sure, but it paid enough to keep me afloat, and boredom was exactly what I wanted, that is, until the man behind Pump 3 showed up. It was 3:03 a.m. on a Monday when it first happened. I was flipping through an old magazine behind the counter when I heard the familiar ding of someone pulling up to the pumps. I looked at the monitor above the register and saw an old black car, something from the 70s. The kind of steel beast you don't see anymore idling next to Pump 3. I watched for a few seconds, expecting the driver to either get out or come in, but the door never opened. The camera feed was static, which wasn't unusual. The system was ancient and glitchy. But as I leaned in closer, I realized I couldn't see anyone in the car at all. The windows were tinted dark, but something about the angle let me glimpse the interior. No movement, no outline, just emptiness. 10 minutes passed. The car was still there, engine running, not a soul around. I tapped the mic button and said, "Sir, if you're planning to fill up, please come inside." No response. I tried again. Nothing. Then the monitor glitched, hard white noise, vertical lines. Then when the feed came back, the car was gone. I hadn't looked away. I hadn't heard tires, no door slam, no engine pulling off into the distance. It was just gone. I stepped outside to make sure I wasn't imagining things. The air was sharp and cold, and the mountains around the station were silhouettes against the sky. No cars on the road. No headlights in either direction. Just me, the pumps, and the hum of the lights overhead. I chalked it up to a technical bug and went back inside. The next night, 3:03 a.m. sharp, the same thing happened. Black car. Pump 3. No driver, no motion. I didn't bother trying the mic that time. I just watched. This time, the camera zoomed in on its own. I'm not kidding. The system doesn't have zoom capability from my end, but the image suddenly tightened. Around the front seat, blurring and twisting like the lens was physically being adjusted. What I saw made my skin crawl. There was someone or something in the back seat. Just a shape, slouched, heavy, pale. Not moving, and then it smiled. Not a person's smile, not natural. It was too wide, too forced, like someone who had practiced in a mirror for too long. The eyes were open but blank, white, all the way through. And then it started tapping on the window from the inside. Tap, 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 rhythmic, and slow. I hit the emergency override and cut the camera feed entirely. The rest of the shift was silent. I told my manager, Darlene, about it the next morning. She just nodded slowly and said, "So you saw him too?" Like it was no big deal. Like it was inevitable. I asked why no one warned me. She just pointed at the break room bulletin board, taped to the corkboard, underneath a list of gas prices and contact numbers, was a wrinkled note that read, "If the black car shows up at 3:03 a.m., do not engage. Do not leave the store. He doesn't want gas." I demanded more answers, but Darlene wouldn't give them. She just said, "You'll know when it's your turn." That phrase stuck with me. I began researching Ridgetop, digging into Old Town records, scouring newspaper archives at the library. It took days, but eventually I found a series of unsolved disappearances, all employees of the same gas station, all working nights, all gone without a trace. The earliest dated back to 1984. Every disappearance happened on a Monday. Every victim was last seen at work. Sometime after 3 a.m., one article mentioned a witness, a drifter, who claimed to have seen a shadow standing outside Pump 3, wearing the skin of a man. The police chalked it up to drugs or mental illness. No evidence ever surfaced. But then came the receipts. Every week, since the early 80s, a single fuel transaction occurred at exactly 3:03 a.m. on Mondays. Pump 3, no card swiped, no cash recorded, just a printout with a full tank logged on, a red ink signature at the bottom. A name scribbled too fast to read, as if whoever signed it wasn't used to writing with hands. It's still happening. I saw it with my own eyes. After 3 weeks, the pattern shifted. Now, when the car arrived, the lights inside the store dimmed slightly. A strange hum filled the air, like power lines vibrating above a lake. I started seeing things in the reflection of the cooler doors' faces that weren't mine. Hands gripping shelves that should have been empty. I kept a notebook, logging every detail every minute. Then, last Monday, I made a mistake. I stepped outside. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity, defiance, stupidity. Maybe it was the whisper I heard, soft and slow, curling around my mind like smoke. Just a little closer. The car door was open when I approached. The back seat was still occupied. The figure inside didn't move. But I felt it. Watching, studying. Something ancient, wearing the idea of a person like a costume that didn't quite fit. Then it spoke. Not aloud, but inside my head. It asked if I wanted to leave this life behind. Said it could offer me freedom, escape, purpose. I ran. I made it back inside and locked the doors. The car didn't follow. But when I looked back at the monitor, the figure was no longer inside. It was standing outside the station, staring through the window. That's when the power cut pitch black. Only the glow of Pump 3 lit the night. Then came the tapping, not on. The window butt on the glass of the cooler behind me. I turned. Slowly it was there. Inside, grinning, pressing one pale hand against the glass, leaving behind a smudge of something black and thick. I screamed. The lights returned. The figure was gone. But the handprint remained. I tried to quit the next morning. Darlene didn't stop me. She just said, "We all quit. Some of us just don't get to leave." I moved out of Ridgetop the following day. But the thing is, every Monday at 3:03 a.m., I wake up. No matter where I am, no alarm, no sound, just a jolt. And outside, wherever I'm staying, a black car passes by. Slow, watching, waiting. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it wants. But I know this. If you ever work a graveyard shift and someone pulls up to Pump 3DO, not go outside. Some pumps don't give gas. Some give something else, and some just take. Let's move to our 10th story. The last customer, when I started working the night shift at the Maple Grove gas station. I didn't expect much beyond long hours of silence, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and the occasional thirsty traveler, stopping for a drink or a feed loop. The town was small, tucked away between dense woods and rolling hills, and the station was one of those old-fashioned stops with peeling paint, a rusted sign, and pumps that looked like relics from another era. I figured it would be a quiet job to get me through college. Nothing more. But there was one rule my manager was very clear about. Never, under any circumstance, stay after 5 a.m. The station closed at 6, and the keys had to be turned in promptly. The reasons? She said it was just company policy. But everyone in town whispered about the last customer. No one wanted to explain, and when I asked, I got looks that made the hair on my neck stand on end. The first time I heard about the last customer was from Jerry, the old mechanic who came by every night to fill his truck with diesel. He was a grizzled man with a 1,000-yard stare and stories that seemed half true and half mad. "You watch yourself," he said one night, his voice low. "There's a customer that shows up just before dawn. He never pays, never talks, but he's always there. And the ones who stay past 5, well, they never leave." I laughed it off then, thinking it was some small-town myth. But I should have known better. My first encounter with the last customer came on a cold October morning. The night was slow, I'd already cleaned the counters, restocked the shelves, and the only thing left was to wait out the final hour. It was 4:58 a.m. when the bell jingled softly, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, dressed in an old threadbare coat, his face hidden by the brim of a wide hat, pulled low. His eyes were dark and deep-set, and he moved slowly, almost floating across the cracked linoleum floor. He carried nothing but a small black bag, worn and tattered. He walked straight to the back of the store, near the coffee machine, and stood there silently. I tried to catch his eye, but he never looked my way. I asked if I could help him find anything. No answer. The silence was thick, pressing down on me like the heavy fog that often rolled into Maple Grove at night. The clock ticked, past 5 a.m., and I remembered Jerry's warning. I felt a chill and told him gently, "We're about to close. You need to leave soon." Still no response. I walked around the counter to approach him, but the moment I stepped closer, he vanished. I blinked, confused. He was gone, no sign he'd ever been there, no footprints, no spilled coffee, no heat from his presence, just an eerie stillness. I checked the cameras. They showed only static during those moments. That night, and many nights after, the last customer appeared again. Always near dawn, always silent, always vanishing when approached. And every time, I'd feel a growing sense of dread, as if he was waiting for something, or someone. One morning, desperate for answers, I stayed past the 5 a.m. cutoff. The lights flickered, and the store grew cold. The man appeared at pump 2, outside the glass door, watching silently. I tried to open the door to confront him, but it wouldn't budge. The temperature dropped rapidly, and I could see my breath in the cold air. The man raised his head slowly, and for the first time, I saw his face clearly. Pale and gaunt, with eyes like black pits. His mouth opened wide, but instead of words, a whisper filled my mind. "Join me." Panic overwhelmed me, and I ran out the back door, never looking back. After that night, I quit, but the last customer didn't let me go. Wherever I moved, whenever it was, just before dawn, I'd catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure watching me from a distance, always silent, always waiting. I don't know what the last customer wants, or why he haunts the early morning hours. But I know this: if you ever work the night shift at a place like Maple Grove gas station, and the clock nears 5 in the morning, watch closely, because the last customer is coming. And if you stay too late, you might just become his next visitor.